Sports professor Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, the show getting behind inside the underbelly of the trillion-dollar business, marketing, legal aspects of sports. You can't get better than where I am today, by the way. We're recording this looking at Jerry Jones's face at the Ford Center complex right next to the Star, which is where the Dallas Cowboys have their headquarters in Frisco, Texas, and where the ancillary of the draft was, the administrative nerve center of the Cowboys, even though the draft set all kinds of records at AT&T Stadium. And when you think about it, 200,000 people entered a lottery for 20,000 people a day, $1 million, let's say $100 million of economic impact, and a 4 or 5 day average visit. And the bottom line of all of this, the NFL creates a new mobile asset that they are going to put on the market, whether in the next years is Detroit, Denver, Green Bay, anywhere in the country, because you don't need it indoors. It's at the end of April, beginning of May. Doesn't have to be downtown, could be. Doesn't have to be at a stadium, could be. It is an incredible event. How about inside the draft? We heard last week about Lamar Jackson paying his lawyer an hourly wage because the slotting of his first-round pick didn't require a lot of negotiation. We'll see what happens now. And then the Browns selecting Baker Mayfield. John Dorsey may be on the spot. He's the GM that risked his job, basically, to make sure that this guy, Baker Mayfield, is not like Johnny Manziel. And every NFL season provides a fresh slate, so it remains to be seen whether the Browns' gamble on Mayfield and the other 2018 draft maneuvers will pay off for the chronically bottom-dwelling franchise. We have Steve Patterson in a couple of minutes, who ran the Texans, ran their draft, ran the Rockets, the Blazers, the Coyotes, the University of Texas, the University Arizona State University AD. He's been through it, a perspective of what the similarities and differences are. Really interesting stuff, but before that, take a look at the top 3 items as far as the 15 of the month. We also have a link to that on our site, horrorsports.com. But the top three stories of the week, as far as NBC Washington concerned, regional, national impact. Subscribe to us on Apple, iTunes. Look for us on Stitcher, Google Play, Audio Boom. The usual suspects. But let's talk about some other NFL stuff before we get to Steve Patterson. Well, when you look at what's happening in Vegas, obviously the draft, the epicenter of the world now, but how about the new stadium in Vegas? A leading urban growth researcher and executive director of the Brookings Mountain West believes that Vegas and Orlando are the two cities that have the potential to utilize sports stadiums in the most effective way to bring in positive economic impact to the region. And because of the strength of the Vegas tourism economy, the new 65,000-seat, $1.8 billion stadium being built just off the Strip, set to boost the already vibrant economy of the Nevada city. The Raiders planning their move for 2020, the Golden Knights to thank for looking at a blueprint on how to effectively integrate a pro sports team into a community. Seeing shifts, maybe there's some nervousness and maybe there's some development opportunity in Jacksonville. Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, confirmed that he is intent on buying Wembley Stadium, the 92,000-seat venue in North London, currently owned by the Football Association, English football's governing body, and used primarily for cup and national team matches, as well as massive concert tours. Khan's bid for $835 million in cash, up from the expected $600 million that sources thought he would offer. The Jaguars tried to make Wembley their second home over the past years, having played 5 games in the last 5 years there, with an upcoming match against the Eagles on October 28, coming at that North London Stadium this season. Said Khan, the announcement and additional evidence were committed to create and enhance new revenue streams to boost the Jaguars. An ever-astute businessman, Khan no doubt realizes Wembley's year-round revenue potential, even if the NFL never intends and embeds a team in London. How about this, though? Bottom line of all of that, too, is that last week we talked about a $2.5 billion deal called the Shipyards in Jacksonville that is being enhanced by who? Shad Khan and the Jaguars. Why can't you have 2 feet across the Atlantic, one as a development opportunity in Jacksonville, and one as an opportunity to bring the NFL even stronger over to London. Remember, Shad Khan also owns the Fulham team in the Championship League. Incredible entrepreneur. Look at other NFL events as well, but not just NFL, but football generally. The Calgary Stampeders winning the right to host the 2019 Grey Cup at McMahon Stadium. Bigger, better fan festival in the week preceding the league's championship game. Commissioner Randy Ambrosie stressed the significance of engaging fans the week ahead of the match. Initially, the city's plans for a festival scarce and limited, but Alberta Minister of Culture and Tourism Ricardo Miranda announced that the province would pay $1.5 million Canadian in funding for the bid and the accompanying plans. The 2019 match will mark the 5th time Calgary hosted the Grey Cup. The last time, 2009. So all across North America and even in London, branding, festivals, stadium ownership, and a whole host of advantages clearly make deals not just one-off, but also really, really important as far as larger development opportunities as well. How about the players that are playing? Football-related, Tom Brady, Michael Strahan, they raised $3 million for a production company, $3 million for their digital company called Religion of Sports Media, Inc. The document filed with the SEC talks about Advancit, which invests in media and technology companies, was co-founded by Viacom director Sherry Redstone. Courtside VC, based in New York and Boston and Detroit, also invests in sports and technology. And Tom versus Time was produced, as we know, by Brady's Facebook video series. The company did the documentary about Kobe Bryant, Victor Cruz as well. So the players are getting more entrepreneurial, and the industry and the fans are benefited. Finally, how about Sam Darnold? Well, everybody's talking about whether he's going to start with the Jets or not, but the one thing they realize, he is a clever guy, and he has the face of the Jets kind of on his back, if that's not a bizarre metaphor. He also developed a elongated throwing movement on longer passes. He was losing time and power. Jordan Palmer observed as a coach, deploying a Wilson soccer ball with undetectable sensors, Palmer and Darnold evaluated various throwing motions for lengthy passes and have been capable of providing him with a faster cross that did not have an effect on ball velocity, launch angle, or spin pace. While Darnold and Palmer have been utilizing the unique the Wilson 10 related football, tracking primary knowledge about ball velocity, spiral accuracy, distance, and whether or not the cross was caught or dropped by the receiver, we've been in a position to use the info and understand that Darnold wasn't gaining any higher spin, but he was becoming more efficient. And after Darnold's input, Wilson created a superior model of the Wilson 10 ball with greater caliber sensors. The company now gearing up to launch a brand new product later in 2018, an elite football and tracking system referred to as the Wilson-related football system that'll be marketed to NFL prospects. So even if Sam Darnold sits on the bench for the first year, he will have had an incredible impact on how the game is played. Kudos to him. Kudos to Wilson. Before we leave and talk about other items, let's introduce Steve Patterson, good friend, AD at Texas, AD at Arizona State. He was part of Bob McNair's bid that ended up founding the Houston Texans, put on the first draft and becoming a really significant executive with the Texans. Arizona Coyotes now, he's trying to get him a new arena and going forward with them as well. And also, he's been involved with the Portland Trail Blazers. The guy has run teams from an executive level at all sports. Compare, contrast, the draft and beyond. Steve Patterson. Rick Horrow with Steve Patterson, and I could tell you he's the president CEO of the Arizona Coyotes. It's hard to memorize his resume because there's so much there. There's the Houston Rockets. There's the Houston Texans. There's the Portland Trail Blazers. There's UT. There's Arizona State University. What'd I miss?
I think that's most of them.
Most of them. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff. A legitimate
painted houses
icon.
one summer.
Thank you very much. And obviously in a quest for stability in the Valley of the Sun. How's that to describe your Arizona Coyotes role?
I think that's accurate. You know, this is a franchise that's had its challenges, but we've been able to consolidate the ownership with Andy Barraway taking over last year. We're right now working on building the business back up, developing the brand, creating credibility with the business, the community, the elected and appointed officials. And as we do that, our revenues grow and we get more solidified in the Valley.
Public-private partnerships, obviously very important. This event is all about sports tourism and economic development in the state of Arizona. Many elected officials get it, many don't. What's the kind of 30,000-foot message for investing in infrastructure?
I think if you look across the country, by and large, those communities that have decided to invest in sports facilities have gotten tremendous returns, not only financially, but in terms of the taxes, in terms of the jobs, also in terms of the quality of life for the people that live there, and for the kind of exposure it gives those communities around the country and internationally.
And so you've had the experience in Houston. Tell us what the kind of success story was like. Texans, Super Bowl 38, recovering the dollars from that as you did it.
Yeah, I mean, the community put up the land and the parking and about $375 million to get what was then Reliant, what is now NRG Stadium, built. But you get a Super Bowl commitment right off the hop. You get a $300 million return on that. A couple of NCAA Final Fours, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment there. A couple of regional NCAA events, a new bowl game. And so all of a sudden you have all these tourist events happening on the weekend, filling up hotels, filling up restaurants, giving jobs to people that are driving cars and whatnot. And so it's a tremendous return for the community as a whole.
And 38 led to 51.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get one Super Bowl, you got a much better chance of getting another one. You know, once you get one NCAA championship and you perform well, you get a much better chance of getting another one. So once you're in the cycle of those kind of events, it's great for the city.
You work with Paul Allen in Portland, arena-related stuff. We did some stuff together. You obviously did stuff with the Rockets. You did stuff with the Texans, UT, all facility-driven and based. He used to be 7'2", and he had black hair. What happened to you?
Well, I can either blame my wife or I can blame the jobs.
The jobs are stressful. They're high visibility. Everybody in the world wants blue seats, red seats. They all have an expertise on where a site should be.
Yeah.
How difficult is that in this environment at this time?
Well, I think it's actually comes with the territory, right? I mean, if you didn't have everybody who thought they weren't an expert, you wouldn't have any fans, right? So you got to have the fans, and they got to have their opinions, and you got to have the talk shows and what goes on Twitter. It's all a part of engaging fans and people in the community. And the more engaged you are, the better conversations you'll have, the more success the brand will have in the long run.
Sports, in a way that can't be quantified, quality of life. You told a story in this panel in your Houston experience about what you've seen the last couple of years in Houston. Tell us.
Well, I think, you know, when you go through building a new building, rebuilding a franchise like the Astros have done, you see the tremendous outpouring of emotion and community involvement from them winning a World Series. It doesn't happen unless you have the new ballpark there. Same kind of thing for the Rockets. The successes they've had over the years doesn't happen without a new arena. You know, you don't get an NFL team unless you've got a viable stadium. You don't get the bowl games. You don't get the championship games and the other kind of events that go there without those kind of facilities. And that's part of the fabric of a great community, whether it's arts, whether it's entertainment, whether it's a port or an airport or rail lines. Sports is just a part of that makes a great community.
You've now done ASU and Texas. You're doing Arizona. You did Houston, and Portland. What's more enjoyable, college environment or pro environment?
You know, I always really look at it as what's the next challenge. You know, sort of once I've done it, I'm moving on to the next one. We love living here in Phoenix. You know, we never gave up our house when we left, so it's great to be back in it. We got a lot of great friends here. The weather's great like this, and like I said a little earlier, growing up in Wisconsin and seeing the Phoenix Open in the middle of February when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, it's a pretty heavenly place.
And God bless you, because the Coyotes and Steve Patterson, let me just put it this way, they need each other. Rick Horrow will be back. Well, Steve Patterson has some interesting perspective, we all know, and the bottom line of it is an incredible position to be able to know about how to run a team, but also transfer your knowledge to a whole bunch of other sports. Steve has some really interesting things to say. Longer interview on the link as well. Let's talk about the NBA. I know the Wizards were eliminated. We're talking about other things, but that process has produced significant dollars for the team just up the road, the Sixers. They largely contributed to a $7 million loss for the city and the state, thanks to the team's on-court struggles years ago. Businesses, restaurants, tourism, hospitality, all lost. Now they head into the conference semis against the Celtics as one of the NBA's hottest teams. The financial situation couldn't be any more different. The process has paid off, with the team cracking the billion-dollar valuation mark for the first time in this year's franchise valuations by Forbes. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, etc., a 48% spike in value, going from $800 million to $1.18 billion. The biggest jump of any team in the league. It's no surprise the process now being emulated by other pro sports franchises across the U.S. Other NBA news: the playoffs push to the next level. How about players who are being paid despite not being on the court? Two of the league's best teams have spent the most money on injured players this season, thanks to fully guaranteed contracts. The Celtics, number 2 in the East, spent a league-leading $34 million to pay injured stars Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, who missed a combined 103 games. Coming in behind the Celtics are the Warriors, Western Conference's number 2 seed, $22 million on Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, but the 4 stars missed a combined 72 games. In total, injured players across the league collected more than $125 million this year, not including the playoffs. If the $125 million sounds like a lot of money for bench riding, consider online gambling analysis of the 2016-17 season. The NBA teams paid out $305 million to injured players. Finally, in basketball, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about where the NCAA and NBAPA are getting as far as the one-and-done rule. Remember, Condoleezza Rice talked about how she and her commission recommended allowing college players who declare for the NBA draft to retain their eligibility should they go unselected in the draft. One of the commission's many proposed changes. The report published by the Commission on College Basketball called the environment surrounding the sport a toxic mix of perverse incentives. The issue of scrapping one and done will be taken up by the NBAPA's executive committee when they meet following the NBA playoffs in June. Literally, the ball is now in the NBA and NBAPA's court. Finally, let's talk hockey. We got to talk about hockey because the Capitals and the Penguins, plus the Kings after the Knights swept them, and then the Sharks, are one of the main reasons for NHL's viewership success. Obviously, the NBC family of networks, the NBC Sports mobile app, nearly 770,000 viewers, and the Penguins an amazing 9-1 against the Caps, but the series is young, and while the rivalry's been a bit lopsided, it's important for the economic engines of Washington and Pittsburgh to understand it's been pretty successful. We'll have to see how the series shakes out. And finally, at another level, the philanthropic level, UC Hockey gives back to Humboldt. After 16 members of the Humboldt Broncos, the hockey team in the Saskatchewan Junior League, died in that bus crash on their way to a playoff game April 6th, the news quickly travels south of the border. We're out of town and coming back from Chicago the day it happened, said Damian Lona, the senior captain of University of Cincinnati's hockey team. We're in a car ride home and just went, wow, it hit home. And after the initial reaction to the accident, it was, what do we do? Well, when then we thought about what to do if we played a charity game against Xavier, the idea quickly gained traction, and both teams scheduled that game to raise funds for the family of Humboldt players. Many local businesses and sports teams have donated to help support the cause. Reds tickets, signed football from Andy Dalton, a gift from FC Cincinnati, gift baskets from Raising Cane's, nominated, mentioned during the items to be auctioned. This will be very successful. Kudos to them, and kudos to the idea. Finally, it would be a complete washout this weekend if we didn't mention our four-legged friends. The Derby doesn't feature Gronk the horse anymore. Gronk the player bought a piece of Gronk the horse, but he ain't running. But the greatest 2 minutes in sports, more than just a mere horse race, it plays a significant financial role in Louisville, Churchill Downs, and Kentucky. Study conducted by the University of Louisville says the Kentucky Derby and its accompanying festival provided positive economic impact of about $128 million in 2011, but now the number is up over $217 million today. The return on investment for the organizing committee has proven to be equally impressive. For every dollar spent by the festival, committee has talked about $22 generated for the community. Statewide, as confirmed by the Kentucky Derby Museum, the equine industry has a $3 billion impact, generating over 50,000 jobs. Clearly, the annual Run for the Roses is more aptly an elegant run for the revenue. Big weekend. Hockey playoffs, NBA, Kentucky Derby, baseball heating up. We will continue to intensify what it means to be drafted, where we're going with majors in golf and tennis, and obviously baseball and other sports heating up next week when we go beyond the scoreboard.